There's a place on old desert maps where water used to be drawn in inland sea that shimmered in blue ink. Today, when you trace that same spot, you'll find nothing but dust and salt. Locals call it the Hollow Sea. It's strange, a sea that never truly existed, yet somehow refuses to be forgotten. Some say it was once a body of water that appeared overnight, swallowing entire camps before drying to white silence. Others believe it was never water at all, but something pretending to be, something that could mirror whatever looked at it long enough. Even now, travelers swear they can hear waves beneath the ground, or see faint reflections moving where there's no surface to catch light. But the real mystery isn't the emptiness itself. It's what it leaves inside the people who go there. Before the Hollow Sea became a whisper on the map, it was a mistake, a blue stain printed on government charts sometime in the 1930s. The first record appeared in a series of geological surveys, marking an inland sea that locals insisted had never existed. No rainfall, no river, no sign of life. Yet, somehow, it was there, drawn in perfect, deliberate detail. Researchers called it a mapping error, but the mark remained, reappearing in every updated edition for decades, shifting slightly west each time. When satellites finally scanned the area years later, they captured something far stranger than sand, a circular depression, gleaming white under the sun, as if the earth itself remembered water that no longer flowed. Those who lived near the basin told stories in hushed tones. They spoke of nights when a faint fog would roll over the salt flats, bringing the sound of gentle surf. Some swore they saw reflections in the haze, ships, lights, faces. Others mentioned animals vanishing after wandering too close to the hollow, only to be found miles away, perfectly preserved, eyes coated in crystallized salt. There was one report from 1974 that stood out. A surveyor named Evelyn Marr recorded strange fluctuations in her compass readings. The needle would spin wildly, then stop, pointing not north but down directly into the earth. She claimed she heard something then, a low hum, rhythmic, like waves striking a shore that shouldn't exist. Her notes ended abruptly with one final line: "If there was ever a sea here, it remembers us." Scientists blamed magnetic interference. Locals blamed the sea. But none could explain why technology failed near the basin, or why cameras refused to capture its center. Even drone footage turned to static when passing over it, a perfect circle of blindness carved into the desert. Still, people kept coming. Hikers, thrill seekers, spiritualists. Some stayed for hours, others for days. Most returned silent, unable to describe what they'd seen. But a few left behind journals, audio tapes, fragments of thoughts that all hinted toward the same impossible feeling that the Hollow Sea wasn't gone, it was waiting. And perhaps the strangest discovery came decades later. Buried beneath cracked salt, a single waterproof notebook belonging to Dr. Adrian Morrow, an environmental researcher who disappeared while studying the site. Inside were pages of careful notes, sketches of shifting ripples, and an unsettling final entry written in shaking handwriting. "It's forming again." No one knows what Morrow meant, but his diary would become the first real evidence that the Hollow Sea wasn't just a myth, and that something deep beneath the salt might still be alive. And that's where we turn next, to the words he left behind. The first pages of Dr. Adrian Morrow's diary are ordinary. Dates, temperatures, humidity levels, the kind of notes you'd expect from a field scientist documenting an environmental anomaly. But slowly, his writing begins to shift. The data becomes fragmented, less about numbers and more about sensations. He starts describing sounds. Wind against salt crystals. He writes, on the fourth day, no, not wind, something slower, wet. He was camped along the basin's southern edge, a place where the ground dips into a shallow bowl of white. He'd set up recorders to capture atmospheric vibrations, expecting nothing more than static. But the first night, just after 2 a.m., his microphone picked up what he described as a rhythmic pulse, like water lapping against metal. He replayed it multiple times, convinced it was interference. Yet each playback grew louder, as though the sound was remembering itself. On the 7th day, Morrow's entries grow tense. He mentions finding footprints in the salt, not his own, smaller than average, moving in a perfect circle. When he followed them, they seemed to spiral inward, toward an invisible center point, before vanishing completely. He began to doubt his senses. The air here tastes electric, he writes. Every inhale feels borrowed. That same night, his instruments recorded another anomaly. Faint vibrations beneath the surface, like a heartbeat in the soil. He noted how it synced with his own pulse until he couldn't tell which was which. 2 entries later, his tone changes again, softer, more personal. I thought I saw water, he confesses. A reflection at the horizon, to be a mirage. When I moved toward, it moved to always staying the same distance away. The more I walked, the deeper it seemed to breathe. His recordings after that moment were never recovered. Only a few audio fragments remain. Whispers, rustling wind, a low hum that rises and fades like an unseen tide. When forensic analysts enhanced the clip, they claimed to hear something beneath the hum, faint words repeating over and over. No one could agree on what was being said. Some heard, "Help me." Others swore it was, "Remember?" By the final pages, Morrow's handwriting deteriorates, shaky, urgent. His last full paragraph reads, "The sea isn't gone. It's beneath us, just waiting for someone to listen. The sound isn't an echo, it's breathing. Every vibration, every grain of salt is part of something alive, pressing upward through the crust." The final line is short, written almost violently across the page. "I can see the surface moving again." That was the last anyone heard from Dr. Morrow. His camp was found weeks later, undisturbed, tents intact, recording equipment neatly arranged, food untouched. Only the ground bore any sign of movement, a long, curved indentation stretching outward, as though something massive had shifted beneath the salt. Authorities ruled it an accident, citing heat exposure and mirage-induced hallucinations. But for those who've read Morrow's diary or heard the raw audio, it's harder to believe. Because if you listen closely to that final tape just before it ends, you can hear something faint, a splash, echoing where no water should exist. And yet, it's only the beginning. For even after Morrow's disappearance, stories of the Hollow Sea continued, stories that began with an old fisherman who refused to leave the shore. Of a sea that wasn't there. They call him the last fisherman of the Hollow Sea. No one knows his real name anymore. Some say he was once a worker at one of the small resorts built before the waters vanished. Others claim he was born there, that his father fished the same invisible waves before him. What's certain is that he never left, long after the shoreline turned to salt. Locals describe a small shack near the southern ridge, half buried under white dust. From a distance, it looks abandoned, until sunset, when the light hits just right and you can see movement, a lantern flickering, a shadow pacing the shoreline. They say he still goes out each evening, dragging an old wooden boat across land that hasn't seen water in decades. The stories sound like local folklore until you realize several hikers and drones operators captured fragments of the same thing. A figure standing in the middle of the flats, holding a fishing line over nothing, motionless for hours. And sometimes the line moves. An interview from the 1990s with a local truck driver describes it perfectly. He'd sit there like he was waiting for something to bite. I thought he was mad until I saw the water. Just for a second, a shimmer under his boat, like the world remembered itself. When people tried to approach him, he'd vanish. No footsteps, no trace. The only clue was the faint smell of salt water, heavy in the dry air. One night, a group of campers claimed they saw his lantern drifting across the basin. It floated for nearly an hour before slowly sinking into the ground, as if swallowed whole. They never went back. A year later, authorities found the remains of a wooden hull buried just beneath the salt layer, exactly where the sightings occurred. The wood was damp, soft to the touch, impossible for the climate. Testing revealed traces of marine sediment, the kind found in deep-sea environments thousands of miles away. It's easy to dismiss it all as myth, another ghost story born from loneliness and heat. But there's something haunting about his persistence, the idea of a man who refuses to accept that his sea is gone. Maybe he's waiting for it to return. Maybe he knows it never truly left. Some say that on certain nights, when the moon is high and the air perfectly still, you can hear the creak of oars cutting through invisible waves. If you stand long enough, you might even see ripples form across the salt, gliding toward you before fading into silence. Whatever he was, man, memory, or something caught between both, the fisherman remains, a guardian of something long buried, or perhaps something that's trying to rise again. And recently, someone decided to find out which it was. A modern explorer, armed not with faith or